Plesiosaurs are an extinct order of Mesozoic marine reptile. They first appeared in the late Triassic period, around 205 million years ago, began to thrive during the Jurassic period, and eventually went extinct due to the Cretaceous extinction event that similarly wiped out all the non-avian dinosaurs. Plesiosaurs evolved from lizard-like marine hunters with legs. In fact, they're more closely related to modern-day lizards and snakes than archosaurs like crocodilians, birds, and dinosaurs. Plesiosaurs are split into two separate clades: the Pliosauroids, which had relatively short necks and massive toothed jaws, and the Plesiosaurids, which had long necks, the longest neck-to-body ratio of any reptile, in fact. Plesiosaurs were only one group of marine reptiles that existed during the Mesozoic era, though. Let's talk about all of them! Now, the first that showed up, probably, was the Nothosaurs. They're the precursors to the Plesiosaurs, and probably their ancestors, and appeared in the Triassic era. They probably ate fish and squid. They were definitely lizard-like, given their relatives. Next ones to show up were probably the Ichthyosaurs. We don't know exactly what the deal is with the Ichthyosaurs in terms of their relations to other reptiles. We don't really know what their ancestors are like. We've seen transitional forms, but beyond that, they were dolphin-like and probably ate fish. They were last seen in the late Cretaceous, though it was prior to the extinction event. They declined heavily due to the competition from Plesiosaurs. Or so it's thought. Another marine reptile order that showed up in the Triassic period were the Thalattosaurs. They grew to be pretty big, and we're not quite sure what their deal is. They're probably diapsids, and they superficially resemble lizards, but beyond that, it's really hard to tell. Another weird guy that showed up during the Triassic period were the Placodonts, which were closely related to Plesiosaurs and Nothosaurs, though they resembled turtles. Not for any real genetic reason, it looks to be some sort of, parallel evolution. And of course then, in the late Triassic, we did have the Plesiosaurs showed up, which became common in the Jurassic, declined during the Cretaceous, and ultimately were annihilated with everything else. The Pliosaurs and the Plesiosaurids diverged in the early Jurassic. For the longest time, they were the dominant predator of the marine oceans. Also showing up in the late Triassic were the crocodilians, who you might be familiar with. They're one of the few Mesozoic marine reptile species to survive the era. They had split into their modern groupings, the alligators, the crocodilians, the gharials, and whatnot, by the end of the Cretaceous. They got even bigger back then than they do today, with Sarcosuchus imperator reaching up around 10 meters in length. Close cousins of them were the Thalattosuchids, also known as the sea crocodiles. They were archosaur cousins to the crocodilians with long snouts that appeared in the early Jurassic and ended up disappearing in the early Cretaceous. They weren't actual crocodilians, though, again, closely related, look pretty similar. Also showing up in the early Cretaceous period were the sea turtles, who still exist and are adorable. They got pretty big back then, got really huge. Turtles are their own separate thing. They're not archosaurs, they're not lizards and snakes, they're just kind of their own dealio. And last to show up, and probably the most fucking badass, were the Mosasaurs. Appeared in roughly the last period of the Cretaceous period, post-Ichthyosaurian, pretty much pushing out the Plesiosaurs into their decline. They're actually monitor lizards, like the modern-day monitor lizards. They are close relatives of those, and basically just marine monitor lizards, and they were fucking huge and badass. I mean, look at them!